roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make it mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
Hey y'all, how's it going? Bonnie Violet here. In case you don't know where you are, you have found yourself at Say Something Sundays. My name is Bonnie Violet. I am a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And yeah, basically what I do sometimes on Sundays is I go live and I say something. I feel free to engage with me if you're joining me live. I'd love to, for you to engage with me in the comments. Let me know you're there. Either way, I'm just going to talk at you. But I'd love to, have more of a conversation with you. But I wanted to go live because one, I was kind of already in face, so to speak, as we say, and after a gig, and so I thought I would just, make the most of it. So. In case you may or may not have been aware, but this morning I hosted a drag sanctuary, which was basically a church service that I curated along with 3 other drag artists and Reverend Sarah at the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Church in Boise. And basically we got together this morning and we did church. It was really fantastic. I've done a number of these. I've been in a number of these drag involved, I guess, religious spaces or spiritual spaces. And this one was really great. One, it really meant a lot to be here in Idaho and to be at a congregation here in Idaho doing this sort of work. For me personally, and I think for that, like my inner child, my inner self, it was really great to kind of just be a little closer to home and drag. And so what did I want to share? I did put in the link in the description. You can find a link to the live stream from the event if you missed it and you wanted to check it out, or maybe you saw it but you'd like to share it with someone else. The link is in the description now. It's on the Boise Unitarian Universalist YouTube page. But I thought I would just share one. I mean, I love curating these spiritual expressions through drag in spiritual community. This happens in a number of ways. One of the things I really loved about this particular event was I really felt like the pastor really not only invited us into the community as in just like, but really worked with us and really incorporated drag and a variety of drag and drag expression throughout a regular service. So one of the things that I thought was really great, if we're thinking about, I want to be mindful in the way that I speak to this, because I don't want to speak like, I guess just because it happened this way and I think it is ideal does not necessarily mean that it shouldn't happen at all, or I'm not happy with the other options. But one of the things that I thought was really great was that the pastor was there. Oftentimes the pastor isn't there for whatever reason. Sometimes it's because they took the day off or whatever, or oftentimes the drag expression is something that's done adjacent to a regular programming. So it's either kind of a special activity or a special event, or it's maybe just a moment within the bigger picture. And so oftentimes the the pastor isn't always present, or the pastor doesn't always, I don't know, it was just really fantastic how Reverend Sarah was able to kind of like, she started off the whole service and really invited us to this space, also introduced us to her congregation and everyone that was there. We did have a full house. The church was full, which was really great to see. But I thought it was really great in the sense that she was able to speak to the fact that like why she was working with drag artists around creating church and spiritual expression, but also, and then to kind of introduce us to the group. I think one of the things this does that a lot of the times in these settings still, and we, you know, it might have its limitations or whatever, but I think oftentimes, you know, a preacher or a reverend or a pastor, you know, they hold a certain authority within their congregation and within their church. And so people really do look up to them for, you know, guidance and leadership and those sorts of things. So I think having a pastor kind of endorse us publicly, I think really allows folks to really open up to the possibility that, like, well, if the pastor is okay with this, or pastor understands how this makes sense here, then maybe I can too. And that might just help folks who might be kind of on the fence or unsure about whether or not drag should be happening in church. So that was one of the things that I thought was really great as well too. And then we also were able to have, sorry, I'm going to turn off that banner. We were also able to have a variety of drag artists. We had Miss Callie G, who did like praise and worship stuff. So played the ukulele, played the piano, and sang and led hymns and that sort of thing with the young people as well as the adults and just the congregation as a whole. Frank Sriracha gave testimony, which was super powerful, and again, just kind of a cool thing to be as part of kind of regular programming. I don't think that this particular church does testimony on a regular basis or would call it that. I know testimony kind of has a it's one of those trigger words for a lot of people, but basically, you know, Frank Sriracha was able to share their experience with drag, with spirituality, and kind of the intersections and of that, and just basically share their experience with that. And that's really what all testimony is really just sharing what God or what drag, you know, like what God is doing in your life, or what the sacred, or I don't know, whatever is doing in your life. And so it was really great to hear testimony. And then Virgo Moon lip sync to Big God by Florence and the Machines, and danced, which was really, again, really fantastic. I think it just added another layer. I don't think that lip syncing happens all the time, or I'm not sure if it happens at all. Sorry, it seems like my connection got bad there for a second. But we had a great lip sync, and then I did my best to give a sermon and talk a little bit about what sanctuary is, what makes sanctuary, like what happens in a sanctuary, the types of sanctuaries that I have found myself in, and kind of the purpose behind sanctuary. One of the other aspects, and I think, you know, check out the link in the description, and then I also will probably be sharing some of my writing from my sermon for folks who might want to check that out. But you also can just check out the live streamed video. I believe it's been edited so that, you know, it's great for watching, but you can kind of get a little bit more sense of things. I didn't necessarily want to, like, I guess, hash that out in detail. So do check out the link in the description, or feel free to reach out to me and I can get you more information on it if you have any questions. But really just kind of talking about, I think the big take home for me that I was hoping to kind of come across was kind of the role somebody who maybe is not of the drag community or the LGBTQ community, what role do they play in sanctuary, and what role do they play in a drag sanctuary? And I tried to just speak to it in more of a general way. And uh, when I was younger, I think I found a lot of safety, and I still can find a lot of safety and comfort, and my walls can come down and I can grow and I can feel more able to bring or be authentic or be true in a space with people that are like me. So I think very much kind of collecting or connecting on the sameness. Um, but one of the things I've come to really appreciate when it is possible is for me to be able to be in spaces with difference, whether I'm the difference, if you will, for some of the other people within the sanctuary, or vice versa, and kind of the role and the power that difference in a space can um, really, I think, add another layer uh, of sanctuary, I guess. One of the reasons why I really spoke to that is when doing this event, there were folks who are not part of the community who were like, is this for me? Is this something that I can go to? And it was definitely, this was an opportunity to invite people outside of our community as well as within our community to join us in a spiritual expression around drag. And so for me, I feel like one way to try to create sanctuary for drag or for folks who are needing sanctuary or seeking sanctuary is being willing to be the different in the space, to bring your difference in the space. One of the things that's been really powerful for me in my healing from spiritual trauma was being able to kind of go back to places that I'd been or places that reminded me of where I had once been and be able to bring my full self into the space. And so, going to a church and being able to be in drag or talk honestly about my experience with addiction or my gender identity or trauma or whatever has been where am I going with this? But like, so being able to, like, again, kind of connecting in that sameness, that familiarity. And so, like, I think for me to be able to put on more of me, if you will, in a space that I didn't think that part of me wasn't allowed or celebrated or was something that people just didn't want to see or talk about or notice. But one of the things that was really important and helpful for me was also, and I think it was great for me because I didn't go to a church that was full of gay people. And if they were like myself, they weren't open about it, aware about it, or whatever. And so, like, I went to church with people I perceived to be straight or were straight, who had families, who were, senior citizens, who were young people, who were kind of across the board of representation. And so it was really helpful for me to be able to go to church and see people who reminded me of who I went to church with when I was younger again, and be able to be in my fuller expression. So I think sometimes the role that you might have in that space can still, because I think a really big part of my healing was the fact that I was able to go into a space with people different than myself and different than my normal, safe place and safe people, really allowed me to open up a little bit more and maybe even feel a little bit more comfortable, not only in that particular sanctuary, whether that's, a church or a classroom or on screen, yeah, I don't know where I was going with all that. I feel like I'm kind of, this event just happened a couple hours ago. I had coffee with Callie G right after. And so I'm just kind of processing it a little bit on here. And so I'm still kind of, I think, wrapping my head around the experience overall and kind of like, I guess yeah. So that was really kind of my take home was, or what I wanted to try to help people understand, is that sanctuary isn't always centered around sameness. And I think it's important that the difference is seen as more of an asset in the space, or it's like what we bring, it's what we can bring to the table. is our difference and our different experience. And the reality of it is that we all are different. We all are unique. And I have to be careful not to let my uniqueness create some sort of separation between you and me. And so I think that's what I think, because of trauma, because of whatever, like it's really hard for me to do that sometimes. And so I guess it's it's finding sanctuary, finding places where I can express more of me, just helps me maybe feel a little bit better when I'm in like just the normal world, if you will, whatever that means. I'm just trying to check, see where I'm at on time and whatnot. If anyone is listening or chiming in, feel free to ask a question like, what the heck is she talking about? Or what is on her lips? Or whatever. Feel free to, make a comment in the comment on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever it is that you're watching this. It'll also maybe kind of help prompt me in what direction to go. I think I am just going to share maybe a piece of what I wrote. Basically, what I did was I shared a little story about my first sanctuary as a child, and then kind of all the places where I experienced sanctuary. And so I think where I want to go is kind of the I'm just going to share one clip, one piece of that here. So sanctuary is where all is sacred. Sanctuary is where I escape to. Sanctuary is where creation begins and ends. Sanctuary is where I am called by my name. Sanctuary is where intimacy spreads its wings. Sanctuary is where freedom and liberation need not exist. Sanctuary is where I go to hide so I can be seen and heard and valued. Sanctuary is where I can bring all of who I am, even if I am afraid. Sanctuary is where my uniqueness could never be terminal. Sanctuary is where I am not told I am brave, nor is it expected of me. Sanctuary is where my difference connects me to you, no longer at our sameness. And I don't really believe that like separation, I don't believe that's true. I think we just come to awareness of how we are connected to one another. And I think that's really what I continue to try to expand myself or that's exciting for me is when I can notice or become more aware of how I am connected with the world around me and how we are one. I'm still kind of figuring around the language with a lot of that, but yeah. Sanctuary is when I stopped chasing the glitter and spent a little time in the dark. You might have heard me say that before. I did write that in another one of my writings, but it was something that, I don't know, kind of stuck out to me. Sanctuary is where I'm reminded that separation, again, is a delusion or a lie. So yeah, so I did go through a lot more than just that. Hi, Di. Is Drag Sanctuary a Castro event? It actually was an event that I hosted in Boise, Idaho. But we do have, there are lots of opportunities to have, I think, drag in church. And speaking of a drag sanctuary, we are hosting the Drag and Spirituality Summit, which is a drag sanctuary in the Castro, as well as on Cathedral Hill, and in San Francisco in October. So October 13th through the 15th, we'll be in San Francisco, and we will be hosting a drag sanctuary of sorts. I'm specifically talking about a drag sanctuary that took place here in Boise, Idaho, but I often work with communities to curate a space, a drag sanctuary, if you will. The drag sanctuary is kind of a newer word or language choice that I'm playing with. But basically, where drag is sacred is a sanctuary. And so, and in San Francisco, there is the drag. We do serve Eucharist. We do the drag Eucharist once a year. That just happened back in June around Pride. So you can kind of keep an eye out for that as well. I also will be in San Francisco this weekend. And I will be sharing some words. Still getting used to the preaching. I will be speaking from the pulpit at the MCC Church in San Francisco this Sunday on the 27th. So thanks for chiming in as well, Di, and it reminds me that I'm not here by myself, which is great. Oftentimes in doing this work, and that was one of the things that was really cool too, was there were people who showed up to the event that were like, oh yeah, I saw this on this, that, or the other, and they showed up, and I was like, oh wow. It's funny because I do a lot of that sort of stuff, and sometimes I wonder, what, I don't know, sometimes this work can feel a little isolating, and so I don't know, it was just kind of nice to see folks show up. I mean, the sanctuary was full. So yeah, where was I going with all that? I feel like I probably have, usually I talk about for 20 minutes or so, and I've hit that time frame. And if this is your first time coming across a queer chaplain or Bonnie Violet or anything like this, if you're curious about any of the other work I do, you can check out the links in the description. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel or other YouTube channels. I do have a podcast where I interview drag artists and talk about their spirituality. It's called Drag and Spirituality. And I've interviewed 55 drag artists from all over the US and Canada. I think US and Canada. I did have one in the UK, but it ended up not going through. But anyway, 55 drag artists of varied gender, shape, like body shape, body type, ability, like race, gender, age. It's a very diverse group of people who have shared their experience with drag and how it connects with their spirituality or with spirituality in general. And some of those folks are really, their drag they're very connected to the idea of their drag being spiritual, maybe even spiritual in nature. Whereas others are kind of playing with the idea or are very much kind of not contrary to it, but they have a new experience around spirituality that drag is maybe not a direct part of, but definitely is not something that takes away from that spiritual experience. Maybe in some of the ways that it would have or could have or did in the past. For folks, and I did interview around 10 artists from Idaho specifically. So if you're curious about that in particular, again, check out the Idaho Drag is Divine series, which is part of Drag and Spirituality podcast. So I think I'll just highlight the Drag and Spirituality podcast for now. And then also, though, I do have Splintered Grace, which is a podcast that I have with my aunt, who is a conservative Christian. And we share what it's like to be in loving, caring, spiritual relationship with one another. We went 20 years separated and unable to be in relationship with one another. And we've been able to, I think, honestly and with a lot of vulnerability, remain in relationship and show up for one another. Di states, drag sort of conjures the ancestral fathers and mothers and is sacred art in most cultures. Yeah, right. I think a lot of this isn't like brand new. And I appreciate you speaking to that as well, that, this, like, doing drag in and of itself is not new, and drag and transness or non-binariness or queerness was and has often, if not always, been seen as some sort of like, I guess that some sort of spiritual creation or a vessel or channel for spirituality, medicine, healing, that sort of thing. So and again, like most things, it's about kind of reclaiming it, if you will, or helping. I think that's been a lot of the experience for me and why I still find myself in church settings, even though I myself don't subscribe to being a Christian, is because I think part of that is being able to just claim that myself or people like me are allowed in that space. And again, it's more about a reclamation for probably like a past life of me, as in not necessarily like prior to this 44 years that I've been on the earth, this go around or whatever, but more in the sense of like my inner child or my younger self in some capacity for me the other. There's just so much healing, I think, that can happen in being in familiar spaces, spaces we once had to run away from. I think that's why I'm back in Idaho. I often get asked that, like, but and my spirit has pulled me here to be in Idaho again. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at that. I'm rambling now, and it's been almost 30 minutes. So thanks so much for chiming in, Di. It was great to interact with you, and hopefully we'll cross paths. I'm assuming you might be in the San Francisco area or the Bay Area, and be great maybe to connect sometime. So I wish everyone all the best. Big thank you to my Patreon and other supporters with the work that I do. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And I'm going to play this little video, and bye-bye.